Making wedding cards is so much fun because there are so many different ways that you can go with whether it's formal or fun. Today we're going to go in this lesson with watercolor, and we're going to use distress inks to watercolor. But more than that, we're going to partially die cut and also stamp these butterflies for this card. So to get started, this is really a lot of fun and it's really easy. I've got this set from Hero Arts that's stamp and cuts, and it has clear stamps, but it also has coordinating die cuts. And in this case, it's butterflies that only partially cut, and I'll show you exactly what I mean. So to begin with, I'm going to stamp with some archival ink, and you want a permanent archival ink for this kind of thing because we're going to watercolor. We don't want our ink to react. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to decide where we want our large butterfly and firmly stamp down there since we're on watercolor paper. And then we're going to repeat with the smaller butterfly. Now my butterfly up at the edge, it didn't do a great stamp. It's a little light. We're not going to worry about that. I can fix that myself without re-stamping. If we need to, I'm going to wait till we color and we're going to see if we even need to fix it. And then I'm going to keep my stamps, I'm going to keep the bottom portion fairly clear for my sentiment. So 3 different stamps for me, 2 small, 1 big, and we are ready to prep for die cutting. So we're going to have to die cut twice only because we only have the 1 small butterfly die. So if we want to do it twice, we're just going to need to run it through once on the 1 butterfly and then another time on the other butterfly. So place those how we like them and get out the washi tape, just something to hold it down just a little bit. Don't need a lot. And it really is okay if it's slightly off center, or if you do this and you think it's just slightly imperfect, please don't worry about it. It'll be just fine. Your card is going to look beautiful by the time we are done with it. Okay, so place it like so, and then we're going to go over to our machine here and create our die sandwich and roll it through. And as you'll remember, I said we need to do it twice. We don't need to do the large butterfly twice, so we can lift that off. And I move slowly and gently just to make sure that I don't tear my watercolor cardstock. That's the one thing that we really don't want to do. And I also want to make sure that I don't tear the butterfly wings either. Okay, so we will reposition onto the other small butterfly and then repeat the process of running this through. And this is my favorite part because I absolutely love that these butterflies are only partially cutting through. So what that means is the wings are going to come up, but they're still attached. So it's still going to be a part of this piece of paper. It's just that we're going to be able to have the wings pop up. So remember I said, especially on this one, not to worry if your die is perfectly center or slightly off, because it's going to have a really free-spirited watercolor look. You're going to have absolutely so many chances to color it and play with it that you're not going to notice once it's finished. So I have some blueprint sketch and some seedless preserves distress ink that I just placed on my mat. I just inked up my mat because now with that on my mat, I can pick it up with a wet brush and I have watercolor. So I can just use this distress ink, and I love that about distress ink. It's so versatile. I can just use it as I would any watercolor at all, and then I'll pick up with the blue and we can blend, we can blot, we can repeat, however you would like to do it. I'm going to do this large butterfly all purpley and blue, and then my other butterflies I'm going to go with oranges and yellows, just a little something different. So you can play with, if you want to repeat this process, if you want to maybe hit with a heat tool to dry it. I'm going to wipe these off because I do not want to cross-contaminate colors on this. I want to make really extra sure it stays really nice and the colors that I intend. So I'm going to come in with carved pumpkin now and wild honey. You can do as many or as few colors as you would like. I really like working with the mini distress ink pads because I feel like they really just work so well for stuff like this. And if it's not blending, if it's not enough, you may just need to dip your brush back into water. You may need to have your brush a little more wet. I like to work with the lightest color first, or if there's a color where I want it to show up in just a few spots, not all the spots. I will do that. I'm going to go ahead and work on both. And I'm also intentionally making sure that in some spots I go a little inside the line and in some spots a little outside. This is going to be a very fun splattery card, so we're not going to worry about if it's just so. And then I'm coming back in with my darker orange. And on this butterfly, I'll put the darker orange in the center, and then on the top, I'm going to have the darker orange on the outside, just to mix it up a little bit. So much fun. I could really sit and color with these distress all day. They're so much fun, especially since instead of just stamping with it or just using it a certain way, we can use it in a lot of different ways. In fact, if I add a little more water here to my carved pumpkin, we could then tap this paintbrush and create flicks of color on our card, just like you would think it was a mist, but in fact, it is just our distress ink. And if you want it to be even more blended, we can take a little bit of water in the mini mister and spray it. And no, we don't have to worry about the butterflies themselves. If they bleed a little bit, it's okay. And if they don't, that's okay too. So if I want to continue adding color, I can. Really just depends on how much or how little color you would like. And in fact, if I wanted to add a different color, if I wanted to come in maybe with some wild honey, I could rinse my brush off and just repeat that process and add more color. And I may or may not need to add water because it is going to blend and bleed. So I may be just fine with the water that's already on there. Before we move forward, we will want to dry this off. But I'm also, since it's a wedding, I feel like I want a little metallic. So I'm going to add a little bit of gold here before we get to drying. Now this gold mist, if you add it while things are wet, it does have a tendency to blend and bleed. If you look at my card here, you can see an orangey, goldy blended spot there. That's because the card was wet and it all blended together, which for me is just half of the fun, is seeing how all of the blending and mixing are going to turn out. So you can then just hit with a drying tool, and if you have some spots that are really wet, you can blot them ever so gently. As long as you don't scrub it around, if you're just kind of setting the edge of a paper towel or a dried out baby wipe or some such to it, it will pick up a little bit of the color, but not a lot. Once we are dry, we're ready to assemble our card. So for this one, what I'm going to do, a couple things to prep it here. I'm going to run it through my black ink, and I'm going to run it through my black ink here because I just want that bit of contrast, and since I stamped in black ink. Now you'll remember I said on this particular one, don't worry about the top. You can see now that it's finished, you can't even tell that the stamping was a little bit off there. That's why I say with stuff like this, just wait and see. Keep creating and see how it goes and see if it really does need a fix or not. In some cases, it's not ruined at all. So for this, what I like to do is put a little foam adhesive on the edges of the wings. The reason I like to do this is because if I mail this card off and there's nothing under them, the wings, or even if I just box it up and I attend a wedding, the wings are going to come back down and they may or may not pop back up upon being opened. So if I want to make sure that they're going to really stand out, I just want to do a little bit of that and then add a bit of adhesive around the edges and around the rest of the card so that it'll hold all together. And then here is my card base. This is a 4x6 card. I wanted to make it a little longer than usual. And I'm just going to place this in the middle here. And then after I have placed this in the middle, and then I can press my little wings down there, make sure that they're in place. You can see it helps them stay up. The final step, we're going to just stamp our sentiment. And this same stamp set, this one stamp set, it's got a whole bunch of different sentiments. So maybe your congratulations is not for a wedding, maybe it's for something else, or maybe you're creating a card for a totally different occasion. This will be good for a lot of different things. And I like that it has a lot of little sentiments because it's really common for me to want just my sentiment to be small because I've had so much big artistic fun that I don't want a big sentiment stealing the show. So there is my congratulations down at the corner. And our card is complete. I hope you have fun, and I hope that you will try doing some distress ink painting of your own.